Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Geobites presentation on what makes cities livable. My name is Helen, and I'm one of the Schools and Colleges Liaison Assistants at the University of Chester. And today I am joined by Namrata Bhattacharya-Mis, who is one of the senior lecturers at the University of Chester, who will be delivering today's presentation on what makes cities livable. You can say hello, Namrata, for a moment.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
You will see her shortly and she'll introduce herself properly. I'm also joined by my colleague Stacey, who will be moderating any questions as they come in today. So you can say hello, Stacey.
Hello, everyone.
So I'll shortly be handing over to Namrata for the presentation, and during that presentation you'll be given the opportunity to ask questions in the chat function on the right hand side of the screen. Your audio and video won't be shared, and you can ask questions anonymously if you wish. You just need to have ticked the box to say that you wish to be anonymous. You can also like other questions that people may have asked to indicate your interest too. Stacey will collect any questions and ask these to Namrata at the end of the session. Okay, so I think we're about ready to start. So I'm going to hand over to you, Namrata.
Thank you very much, both. Thank you all for joining. So my name is Namrata, as Stacey has kindly, Helen has kindly introduced me. And yeah, I'm a senior lecturer. Other than that, I'm also the program leader for International Development Studies, and I work at the Department of Geography and International Development at the University of Chester. And I've worked, before I joined the university, I have worked with the different national and international organizations, such as Environment Bay Agency, the World Bank, and my interest mainly in urban areas. That's why the presentation today comes from disaster-related projects that I have been working with especially in urban areas. So in today's presentation, when I'll be talking you through different aspects of livability, you will see a very big indication of my research interest in there. I've worked with organizations from Brazil, especially with the University of Sao Paulo, in China, in the US, in South Carolina, Australia, and Germany. Specifically, my research interests lie in the understanding of different vulnerabilities, especially on the dynamic interplay between different hydrological processes, especially flooding, and different socioeconomic systems from the human perspective. So today's presentation is about what makes cities livable. So now we know when we are talking about cities, the big question that comes in our minds is that we are more than half of the world's population now live in the urban areas, especially increasingly in highly dense cities. However, urban settings are relatively new phenomena, especially in the human history. When we are talking about transition or transformation, we have transformed over the last few decades incredibly towards an urban living. So we live, work, travel, build networks, and it's more about urbanization. And when we look at the world population today, we see that more than 4 billion people now live in urban areas globally. So looking at the first, if you can see in the first graph here, how many people, if we ask the question, we have moved. When you see up to 2006, there were more rural people in the world than urban population, but more than over half of the world, which is about 55% of people at the moment, now live in urban settings. The United Nations estimates this milestone event, and it happened in 2007. Now, in the next map, you would be able to see the share of population that's living in urban areas. Since 1960s, the population has increased drastically from almost 50 to 80% increase is mostly in the lower and middle income countries, and people have moved towards urban areas very fast. There has been an urbanization rate, and there is more migration rate, higher migration rate in urban areas. Now, how urban is the world? Why is that urbanization happening? In the next graph, you will see the share of urban population that live in the largest cities. Now, I'm going towards these largest cities because when we are defining what is urban, what does urban area means, there is no specific definition. When we talk about in Argentina, for instance, it is defined as localities with more than 2,000 inhabitants. In Japan, cities are defined as municipalities that satisfy few criteria like 50,000 inhabitants or more, 60% or more of houses located in the main built area, or 60% or more of population, including their dependents, engaged in manufacturing, trade, and other activities similar to that. India has a different definition. Zimbabwe has a different definition. Singapore, where 99% of the population lives in urban areas, has a different definition of urbanization. So, therefore, although the definitions differ from area to area, if we look at Europe, European Commission actually estimates 85% of the people of total population in Europe live in urban areas. So you can see the differences there. And we are not even going to look into the density of population or different population that lives in slum areas. Now, if we only focus on the population in largest cities, the 5 countries that have been highlighted here, you can see Zambia has the highest concentration of population, followed by Bangladesh, Libya, and then comes United Kingdom, and finally India. Now, why am I talking about these factors? What difference does it make if more people are living in urban areas? Now, with 70% of the world population, which is estimated, and this was estimated in 2007 by United Nations, that government and private sectors, and it was said that civil sectors, actors, they are going to, when such density of urban population happens, what happens is that private sector and civil sector, the sectors that is managing the urban areas, they come into a lot of pressure. And to provide a resilient, provide an adaptive and sustainable living condition to support well-being of people, which is in line with the Sustainable Cities and Communities Sustainable Development Goal number 11, gets very much affected. Let's see what makes urban areas attractive to people. Now, this gives you a background of urban people, urban areas being an attractive source, and people are, as United Nations says that people are moving fast, and population has cities are becoming mega cities, and there is a problem with sustainable urbanization. Still, when we look at urban areas, they are thriving. They are more and more people from rural agglomerations are moving with 33 mega cities worldwide. This is very, very important that while one in eight people live in the 33 mega cities worldwide. It's very important to understand what makes these areas, these urban areas, so important for people. Before I go into that, my question to you would be, if you can do a little exercise for me. So if you can tell me which is your favorite city in the world and where you would like to live. And when you are going to do that, how you will do it, you can go to, with whatever devices you have, to www.menti.com, and then you will be asked for a code where you can put this code here, 6226103, and then you will be able to see this question. So if you can just add some comments that which is your favorite city in the world and why you would like to live here. I will get the responses and I'll share it with you as soon as I get your responses. So what I will do, I will start my clock and I'll give you 3 minutes to fill the answer up. So don't think too much. Just first name that comes to your mind, put it in, and then we will take it from there. So I'll put my clock on and I'll give you 3 minutes to finish that task.
If anyone's unable to access that, you can also pop your favourite city into the chat and we can let Namrata know. Do you have a favourite city, Namrata?
Yes, I do actually. It's very difficult though, but yeah, it's my hometown, Kolkata, which is in India, in the eastern side of India. So yeah.
Okay.
I love living there. I don't. If you ask me why, that's a very difficult question, even. But still.
Yeah, it's hard to think of reasons, isn't it? Yeah.
I see some answers coming in. That's brilliant. Great. Okay, you have still 1 minute and 35 seconds left.
What about you, Stacey? Do you have a favourite city?
Oh, good question. Possibly Barcelona or Helsinki in Finland, only because I live there.
Both beautiful. Yes. Hard choice. What about you, Helen?
Oh, I really liked New York and Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Different reasons.
I think you can add your choices there as well.
Yeah.
Okay, 50 seconds left.
We have had a comment come in the chat saying at the moment I'm happiest living in Chester. It's my home, but I love to travel, but I always want to come home.
Yeah, we'll get there. I know this is, I think all of us feel pretty similar there, isn't it? Why? That's why I said that's my hometown. It's very difficult to say why I love it, but you love to go back home, isn't it? Okay. Almost there. What I'll do is I'll try and share the screen with you and then go back to the presentation so that.
Yeah, we've just had another one in the chat. Somebody's posted Krakow. It is beautiful.
Right. Okay, our time is up. Thank you very much. Oh, just trying to dismiss it. Yes. Thank you very much. So what I'll do, I'll share my screen. I'll unshare this and I will just share this screen so that you can all see. Sorry. Let me just, yes. So I don't know if you can see my screen. It should come up. So I can see, is it visible?
Yes, it's just come up. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So I see Cornwall, Truro in Cornwall, Gothenburg, beautiful landscape, amazing food. Yeah, that's right. Meatballs, wow. New York, there you go. Tokyo, New York, it has lots of cultural places such as museums, and it's very busy. Modern Tokyo, yes, modern and alternate place. Gothenburg, Newcastle upon Tyne, not too big, and people are very friendly. Definitely a good place to live. Berlin, interesting, lots going on. Friendly. New York again, seem to be a good choice there. Tokyo, yes. New York, okay. Quite popular. Reykjavik, yes, beautiful. due to the surrounding geographical features and the small size of the city. Okay, Kathmandu, Nepal, hugely diverse foothills of Himalayas, so excellent physical case study. Okay, someone from the physical geography side I can see already. Mexico City, Chester, it has a lot of family heritage for me, and it's a beautiful city that I have visited often. I haven't visited that many cities globally. Well, Berlin again, New York comes back, Chester again. Okay, Chester is really giving competition here. I would say my favorite city to live in the world would be Reykjavik. Okay, since Iceland has such an interesting culture and is surrounded by some amazing scenery. Rio, because it's bustling with life, I would love to like, okay, all right. Reykjavik, oh my goodness, I think we have a winner. But can you see the trend there? Okay, what I will do is I will now unshare and share my presentation again. Yes. Okay, can you let me know if you can see the presentation back again?
Yeah, it's back.
Okay, brilliant. So I can see a pattern here, which is quite interesting because many of you would like to live in a city because of what? If I go through, like I was saying, some cities are warm, people are friendly, some cities are bustling. There's some people like it because natural beauty, some people like it because of culturally they are diverse. There is good food, festival, religion, things like that. So there are all different kinds of factors that might influence your decision in making why you want to live in a particular city. This is what brings us to the factor that why do we want to live in a particular place? That we live in a particular place, what does livability mean? Livability means that where residents, you would like to live in a place where you want to feel safe. You want to live in a place where you feel socially connected, like Chester, you have family here and included. You want to live in a place which is green, environmentally friendly, sustainable. You want to have good access to housing, public transport, walking, cycling, infrastructure, employment. So overall, a good living condition. There should be space to walk, parks, health facilities, community services, leisure and culture. So whatever answers you have given me here brings me directly to the definition of livability, which is not defined anywhere very clearly, but it has all these indicators. So one of the studies in Australia referred to few indicators that can summarize what livability means to us. Quality of life, obviously. There is a livability index worldwide, which can be based on economy, which can be based on, how green environmental sustainability, how good the transport system is, and things around that. So this is called, it's almost like making a great recipe, but for that, you need to have all the right ingredients in the right proportion. It's a broad concept of broad well-being. We live in an urbanizing world. Cities are increasing in prominence, as major social and economic hubs. But for such cities, livability rankings and awards can really be a welcome move, especially in terms of global recognition, and they can be a marketing tool for the cities. Now, looking at all these factors here, if we move and see based on what people actually make livability index. Okay, so people have been ranking which are the best cities to live. So for 2020, the Global Finance have ranked the world's best cities to live in 2020, where it's very much urban focused, as you can see, and the top ranked city is Tokyo, which many of you would like to live, followed by London, and then these are followed by Singapore, New York, Melbourne, Frankfurt, etc. Many of the cities which you mentioned that some of you would like to live. Now, let's see what others have to say. Another index looked at how green these cities are. Now, if we look Vienna in Austria, which ranked first in the context of livability, and we just compare it with global finance, which looked at the economic aspect of livability, you can see Vienna ranked number 13 on the same year. So there is you can see a disbalance, or there is a conflict of interest in terms of environmental sustainability or economic sustainability. So now the question arises, is there a midway? Yes, the definition of livability appears without limit. Yes, we know somehow sustainability forms a part of the whole equation, but which sustainability are we going to look into? Now, cities actually work as a system. Okay, there is a system of governance. There is a system of socioeconomics around here. They are multi-layered. These systems are multi-layered, and all systems need to work together fine. Now, if we are talking about the structure, like infrastructure, cities, housing, what is available, all those indicators that I have shown you before have shown you that there are several layers in a city, starting from the ecological system to the governance system. What happens when there is a shock to that system? Now we are living in a world of shocks now. We have heard about the pandemic, and I don't think I have to discuss or describe what it means. Everyone knows. That is called a shock in the system. What if there is a flooding? We have heard about it also more recently, winter floods in the UK. What if there is a cyclone? Now, all these things has an impact on, with the changing climate. Cities need to cope, especially if it is a slow onset. It provides stress, like rising sea level, drought, while others, such as increased threat of sudden shocks, such as flooding, stronger cyclones, or extreme heat. All these factors, as a result of climate change, as a result of many anthropogenic factors, human-induced factors, we have seen how badly these things affect the livability of a city. Now, we discussed a lot about countries which are well developed or economically rich. What happens? There are more than half of the population in the world live in countries which are not that developed. What happens to those cities when there is a shock in the system? So I've got a very short 1-minute video here where you will see that it is a cyclone that came last year in May 2020 over India and Bangladesh. So there's a short clip for you. I'll play it. Oh, I think it didn't play. Somehow it's stopping. But basically it's showing what can the cyclone of this size do, and how many people have to move around. People have to be moved to different part of the in safer positions and locations in order to save them. So you can see, you can get an understanding of, in a country like India and Bangladesh, which are developing quite quickly, and the rate of urbanization is very, very fast there. Things like that, when a system gets battered by such huge storm, I will focus only in India, because the rest of the cyclone that passed over Bangladesh, this is Bangladesh, and this is the place where the cyclone passed in India. Majority, it was called Kolkata, again, my hometown. It battered the city altogether, and there were and what happened as a result was that, if I talk about Kolkata, the livability index there is quite low. Why? Because Kolkata suffers from low commute speeds. The traffic system is really horrendous. You have to go out 2 hours before your class starts so that you can reach to the university at the right time. There are high levels of caste segregation. So the caste system in India, especially in this part of Calcutta, some parts of Calcutta, they are still very much prevalent. The city does not accept migrants easily. So there are a lot of issues that makes this city not that livable for many, even with people within the country. Now, when there was a mini livability index that happened within the country, and in many livability indices, Calcutta doesn't even take part, but as you can see here, it comes at the bottom of the list. So that means what? The city is already very vulnerable for several aspects in terms of livability. And when a cyclone like that happens with a wind speed of 185 km per hour, with so many people in the middle of a pandemic, which was May 2020, the peak of a pandemic, there was shortage of drinking water, shortage of sanitation. There was no social distance followed or maintained because it was impossible due to the sheer pressure of people that were living in that part of Calcutta, which was battered by the storm. Electricity supply, basic supplies, water supply was shut off for up to 7 days in some areas. So you can imagine what happened to the hospitals, what happened to the people who are already vulnerable to this. Now, why am I talking? Because as you can see, in the middle of a pandemic, when people are trying to help, transport system is lost, infrastructure is lost, you cannot go by bus anywhere, your electricity lines have fallen. It gives you an idea that on top of that, if there is a double trouble like coronavirus at that time in the peak of the pandemic, to normalize a city like that, it's not very helpful, isn't it? So recovery time, as you can see here, took up to 2 weeks just to remove the plants, the trees that have fallen and things like that. So how do we build back better in that context? Looking at the different dimensions such as quality of life, equality, health, safety, affordability, accessibility, especially in a country, in an area which is already quite economically poor. What do? Now I'm focusing back to what the United Nations says about it, making cities and human settlement inclusive, more resilient, more safe and sustainable, which is part of, you may know about this, that is part of the Sustainable Development Goals, which focuses on one of the key criteria in this goal is to reduce disaster risk reduction. It talks about and it emphasizes on the fact that there is a need to intersect resilience, sustainability, and livability together. Based on that concept, how do we operationalize livability? How do we make it happen, right? Especially when we looked at high income countries, livability index are looked at differently as compared to middle or low income countries. It can be quite normal to feel that there will be recreational space, there will be housing and public transport, which is already available, which many of us base our aspect or a concept of living in a particular area, beautiful area and things like that. But in lower income and middle income countries, the concept of livability is to necessarily to have accessible potable water, to have labor rights, right, tenure rights, right, so that you're not ousted in times of pandemic. Waste management should be proper, as well as hazard susceptibility needs to be reduced. In 2019, by the middle of 2019, 7 million people were replaced from their homes for this particular issue, for this particular cyclone. So now, another research, CRC research, they are actually working on livability also, and they focus on this kind of vitality, how community can be brought together to enhance livability, like not only the basic needs, but you also need the social capital in terms of connectivity. You need to have self-actualization, like access to lifelong learning, How do you make yourself aware? How do you make your community aware? I'm just picking up some points from here. You can have a look at the slides later on and you would be able to understand how multiple factors have an influence on livability criteria. There is a need for aesthetics. We all would love to live in a beautiful place, but then you have to have that access to nature. You have to have that sustainable community development by providing or sharing knowledge and experience, understanding, kindness, compassion. These are the factors that generates our whole operationalization of livability. Does that mean policies don't has an impact? Do they not have an impact how government or governance works? So to give you a brief idea of how livability can be focused on, you can see livability when we are focusing only on human well-being, it comes with housing, quality, affordability of housing, comes with access to transportation, mental health, physical health, human capital, and social capital. However, it is very much an interconnected system. The three circles, which starts with something that is when it is made livable, you need to be resilient against disasters. You need to have sustainability. That means you need to have, maybe if I just talk about the economics around it, you need to have enough funding to go ahead and continue the development process and come out of such, because you cannot stop a cyclone from happening. But if you have the resources, then it gets easier. And if you are prepared and you know the quality of the surrounding, again, the recipe of being livable, it's important that we understand that very well. Now, systems and processes play a big role, whether it's environmental quality, where you are talking about good air quality, indoor air quality, or waste and emission management, like when there is air pollution, it's a greenhouse effect, or solid or liquid waste management. It's important to understand how those things can be used, how those things can be reuse of waste and things around that. That needs what? Proper governance, proper system requirement. Again, resource inputs. Input can come from, when we are talking about exogenous pressure, like pressure from outside. A pandemic came, okay, health pandemics. It was not in our control, but changing climate, extreme events happening. However, there are some inputs that come from different systems. The systems can be urban. We are talking about urban systems here, like governance, like technological sophistication, behavior of people, behavior of households, waste, less waste, food supply, demand, our way of consumption, sustainable consumption, transport, supply and demand, managing the household supply and demand, urban design and development, using more green spaces when we are developing new things. And this has to go within the livable cities, within the method of livable cities. And that's how we need to prioritize those livability aspects for every city development, changing governance, things around that. So I'll not talk about all these things, but now it's your turn to decide when you are thinking about a city where you would love to live in, where people are kind, where there is proper. It's not only that one aspect that we focus on. There are a number of factors that we can focus on. What is your favorite? Is your favorite city resilient enough? Think about it. Is your favorite city livable enough? Think about it. Think if you would like to live in that city, why you would like to live in that city. Not only because it's beautiful, but does it has the sustainability behind it? Okay, so I'm quite happy to answer any questions. If anyone has any, I will finish my talking here and would be happy to respond to any questions if I have any.
That's great.
Thanks. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I was just saying thank you very much. That was really interesting, especially as I'm a geographer. I found that really interesting. Yes, I'll hand over to Stacey to see if there's any questions that have come through.
That's great. Thank you so much, Namrata. We've had quite a few questions that have come in. And I'll start with the first one. It's a comment followed by a question. It's interesting that lots of people seem to really value the beauty of a city. Is this something we need to factor into how we define a sustainable city? How do we do that?
Thank you very much for that question. Quite interesting because yes, aesthetics is part of sustainability. We don't want to live in an ugly city. We don't want to live in a matchbox, thinking, okay, I'm being very sustainable. I'm not using any resources, but I'm living in a box. That's not being called sustainable. It is. When we talk about sustainability, when we talk about health, when we talk about the possibility of enhancing the livability experience, aesthetics comes as one of the top priorities. To have beautiful cities, you need to increase greenery. Now, what is the concept of beauty? That is a different thing. How a city can be changed to make it more beautiful, make it more suitable, make it more accessible to people. These areas like playgrounds for children, what are the priorities? These themes need to be prioritized. This needs to be prioritized, and aesthetics definitely comes in one of them, one of the top priorities.
That's great, thank you. The next question, United Nations Population Fund 2007. Has this prediction changed with COVID?
Very interesting question. COVID has pushed us back in terms of SDGs. Many people now prefer to move towards, moving out of urban areas because of the type of working conditions have changed, employment options have changed. Now people have been given more options of working from home. I don't think, the latest data that I have, without considering the COVID, it says not 70%, but 68% of the world population by 2050. But it did not take into account COVID. So most probably, if we see a report next year, when we will see that people are moving more towards rural areas, there might be a slight difference. However, I doubt it. I highly doubt it that it will make such a big difference, because still, infrastructure, if you look at rural and urban disparities in terms of various livability indicators, you will see that definitely people would still like to prefer, they would prefer to live in urban areas because, infrastructure, because of transport facilities and other aspects.
Thank you, Namrata. The next question we've had in is, given that we are living in the midst of a global pandemic, how do livability indicators help us in understanding urban health conditions?
Well, urban health conditions include two sides. The two sides of the story is, first, we are in the middle of a mental health week. So mental health and physical health. When we are talking about pandemic, first thing that we need to consider is what people consider as, it's very much connected to the previous question somebody asked, whether, there might be some changes. When we talk about health, it's a holistic thing. And in order to understand urban health condition, urban livability, we have to consider both aspects of health. In the context of global pandemic, we have seen that mental health conditions have drastically reduced. We have seen impact on mental health as well as obviously physical health. Now, urban living has its own pros and cons. There is lack of social cohesions in many areas. There's lack of this community bonding, and we have seen that there are several areas where people don't know their neighbors. So this neighborhood aspect. So all these factors come together when we are talking about living in a city and living and not integrating with our maybe office colleagues. Only way we are trying to talk with each other is via on a virtual field. So it has a big influence on people's minds and their physical health. There is a problem with obesity, problem with exercise, and people are not getting motivated enough to do their work. So all these factors leads to one this is part of a livability index. So it's important that we understand and take that into account. Yes, nobody knew about the pandemic before. So these factors did not come across. We are learning quite a lot. This pandemic has taught us a lot. Everyone has something to say about this. Therefore, those factors need to be integrated more. And this is the time when more research is required to look into how such pandemic has an influence on the livability situation.
Thank you. And the next question, what roles can SDGs play to make cities more livable?
Well, I have touched on it briefly. So the global goals, part of that is the 17 goals that we are in the middle of. So now it started in 2005 when the SDGs were first introduced, and it will go up to 2015, and it will go up to 2030. So we are kind of in the middle where we should have reached somewhere. Every country is trying to reach that point where they would see that there is a plan of action for a safer world. There's a plan of action where there is a better management of risk and vulnerability in several contexts. Now, talking about, if I just focus on one of those goals, which is the making cities resilient, and talking about disaster risk reduction, for instance, the example I showed, this is an integral part of the social and economic development. And, recognizing there are several goals around sustainable development, the goal, despite it being very prescriptive, it shows us the way towards development. It shows us the way towards well-being. And focusing on something, having something in mind, having a target, definitely helps people to motivate. So I feel that, by 2030, this agenda for sustainable development, it recognizes and reaffirms, I guess, the urgent need to reduce the different vulnerabilities, different risk, for instance, risk of disaster. In addition to the, direct reference to, for example, the third United Nations conference, which talked in Sendai framework, which talked about the disaster risk reduction, there are a number of opportunities that SDGs can achieve, and they are very much, all the SDGs are very much interconnected, interrelated. So finally, we are talking about cities which are just coming out of poverty. When we are comparing with cities that are highly developed and have economic, quite strong economically. But when I just showed you the comparison between two bigger cities, one is very green, another one is economically vibrant. So these comparisons, when we are looking at SDGs, it shows us the way forward. It shows us the balance these needs. It shows us that how different factors can contribute to sustainability and livability. I may have said a lot of things, but yes, this definitely, because SDG is such a big thing, and I can talk for hours.
Thank you, Namrata. The next question is, would you say that megacities are much more likely to lead to poverty in certain parts when hit by hazards compared to lower density population areas?
Yes, very, very good question, and yes, very relevant question, especially, the city I have shown here, the example, it has 14.5 million people in the urban agglomeration, and one of the densest cities, very densely populated, and cities like that, when it gets hit by disasters, definitely there are more vulnerable people there. And when these cities, especially if they're economically not that strong, there is already poverty existing, and with a disaster like that, in cities like Sao Paulo in Brazil, or Calcutta, or in Mumbai in Pakistan, we have seen some of the megacities, or even in developed nations, when cities are battered with such kind of things. I think if the city is already poor, it's already vulnerable. Therefore, if it is battered or there is a shock in the system, the vulnerability increases and it takes longer to recover from that vulnerability, from that risk.
That's great. Just a couple more questions that have come through now. The next one is there a limit to how large in area or population a livable urban area can be?
I don't think there is a specific limit like that. Well, there are mega cities which can be called very livable. Australia is a very good example where cities have been very well planned and they are giving a lot of thought in making cities more livable and more resilient. However, depending on if the city is larger in size, there will be definitely the management of the city, governance of the city can be difficult. Therefore, if there is a strong governance, if there is a proper distribution of power, proper distribution of resources, then I don't see that there should be any limits. It can be as big as it is, but again, there has to be proper management of that city, and to find that how the city will be managed needs a strong governance, very strong government that can look after, oversee, and see that it is all the factors are taken into account transparently.
Thank you so much. And our final question in the chat is, what city is projected to have the largest population by 2050? Oh,
that's a tricky question. I have to check the United Nations report, but I don't know, some city in Asia, I presume. If the person who asked me the question knows the answer, I would love to know that.
You need to be able to see into the future.
Yes.
No further questions, Stacey?
No further questions. Thank you so much, Namrata.
Thank you very much. Before I go, I would like to show you that if you want to know more, we are open. We were at the University of Chester. You will see we actually talk about all these things that I just gave you a very brief overview, but there are so many other things to think around these issues. That is me, by the way. You can't see it. It is in front of Geneva. Sorry. It's in Geneva where we went. It's a very livable city and it's in front of United Nations, and we have different courses. You will get all the links for the courses if you want to have a look. And I want to finish it by showing you the happy faces of my students. This is our picture in the Cadbury world, which we go for a field work. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. And they actually love the city to be very livable because of the existence of Cadbury world. So I don't know how, it's not part of the indicator, but there you go.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Namrata. All of the links from today's session are in the chat, along with links to the geography and international development pages with the different courses. And there's also a link to our outreach page so that you can visit and see what events and resources we have there as well. So all that's left for me to say then is say thank you again, Namrata. Thank you, Stacey, for moderating the questions, and thank you all for attending and joining and getting involved. It was really great to have your attendance here today, and we look forward to your attendance at the next Geobites events. All of the information is on the website, so thank you for joining, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.